Okay, so at least everyone can see it big enough but not clear, correct? Or is that even like, yeah, yeah-ish? I don't know what that means, Catherine, but okay, that's fine. You see some. All right, great. Okay, so welcome back. This is take two of the recording, but this is where the actual content starts. So I'm going to cover how to be a more effective entrepreneur by not being politically correct, like I said earlier, but also by covering it in these four main areas. And what I strongly recommend we do, because we have a shorter period of time, is for you guys to not necessarily listen to necessarily what I'm sharing, but also listen to the quality questions that I'm asking about each segment, because I'll have about exercises for you in each of these four segments. And the reason for this is, like I said, one of my main goals and my aspirations, and hopefully what sets me apart as a business consultant slash coach, is I've always taken on this crazy business name called Leaders of Tomorrow. And what I find is that when I used to give people all the answers, it actually disempowered people and they weren't very effective in their businesses. But if I started sort of giving people tools of the clarity, like I always try and do, but then phrase it in a question, you get to answer those questions and then can kind of guide you through the answers of those questions. I find people are more empowered. So you find there's going to be more questions for you to answer. But I strongly, strongly recommend that you try and do some exercises at the end of each section for yourself. And obviously, when you get the recording, to try and answer these questions internally, because at the end of the day, what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another. Okay, so just really take that home as to why I approach things this way. And sometimes I'll give answers, sometimes I won't, but that's just probably to try and empower you so that you become more effective in what style works for you. So we're going to kick off by obviously talking about the first one, which is what this whole webinar is about, is what are the 5 traits that effective entrepreneurs have. So if we look at that as the first question, I probably want to kick off by talking more about what 4 traits I find a lot of people when they come to my seminars, we're doing consulting, or some of you have obviously challenged me on some of these, which is all very, very good. But these tend to be some of the things that people think, and maybe this is because of the schooling system, that they feel that these are the credentials or the things they need to make them successful in business. And I can absolutely tell you without a shadow of doubt, and maybe sounds a bit arrogant, but I think I'm right and most people are wrong on this, is that majority of the most successful entrepreneurs, the most successful CEOs I've ever worked with, ever come in contact with on a personal basis, or ever interviewed to find out about their success stories, or ever read a biography about, and you can do the same on yourself, is that some of these people never have academic credentials. When I say they never have academic credentials, they might have dropped out in year 4, they might have dropped out in university, they might have not had an MBA, but it just comes to show that a lot of people may think they need to go and do courses like certification, if you like. You need to have an MBA to feel qualified so that they can go run a business. They need an accreditation in coaching, for example, in my industry. They need to do this master coaching course, and then they'll feel confident to go and deliver the program. 99.9% of the time, you don't need a lot of academic credentials as one of the traits, if you understand what I mean, to become successful. What you may need, however, is that you definitely need to have, if you like, maybe say you're in accounting, like Catherine, for example, there are some industry-specific credentials you have to get for you to be an authority or for you to be compliant, like a lawyer in some cases. But the running of the business is what we're talking about. To be effective as a person, that is not the criteria. Those are completely different things. So I hope I've made myself clear on that one. Second one that I hear a lot of people say is that, okay, well, you have to really get things right. You have to really make sure, and I discuss this in a very light way with some of my friends, because as you probably will notice very soon, and maybe even in this presentation, there's going to be some typos all over the place in my presentation. Sometimes my Facebook pages don't have correct spelling. Now, the truth of the matter is it's very, very true that 80% of the world population would prefer to have something that is proofread, would prefer to have a product that you have tested. Okay, but the reality is, that if you stay too long trapped in making something perfect, you actually automatically become afraid of making mistakes. And then what that does is you start leaning more towards having a perfect product, when at the end of the day, the only person that knows what a perfect product is your customer. Okay? So most people who are not effective in the sense of being an entrepreneur is they spend so much time beta testing a product. They spend so much time trying to get a perfect website going. And they spend months and months and 80% of their time there. When at the end of the day, what they should have done, in my opinion, obviously, is that they reduce their perfectionist attitude, but increase their excellence attitude, and then produce a product 80% of the way, and then launch it and let the marketplace give you the balance of the 20%. And then you tweak the product and then relaunch it again. Because 9 out of 10 times you'll never get it right the first time. And a perfect example I'll give you is this person we all think is a perfection-oriented person like Steve Jobs. The first time he launched his product, Lisa, it actually had a voice command that was supposed to be on the program. I don't know if you know this, but this is actually true. And he didn't get the voice command to work, but he actually launched the product knowing that that part of the computer was malfunctioning. So they just basically, I just saw the movie. So they just basically launched the product, okay? And then they used the voiceover from another beta test the computer, and everybody, as far as they were concerned, that the computer was responding, but it was actually never working in the first place. Now, that was just on the launch date. But obviously in the back end, they launched it, they fixed the problem, and the product was off. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you were stuck on perfection orientation on every single aspect of their business, they wouldn't have launched and kept to the deadlines. So the other one is also this lone wolf. A lot of people assume, the big guys like, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, or Bill Gates, or anyone else you want to look at that is in the public eye. They always sort of embody this, I did it all my way and I did it myself. The reality is, guys, that I've never met any successful person that has done anything by themselves. So what that actually means is, for heaven's sake, I'll say it this way for some of my clients, please be okay with allowing other people to help you in your business. Be okay with other people taking some parts of your business away from you, because chances are they can do it a lot better, they can do it a lot faster. And 99% of what a CEO does is delegation. So if you don't have that opportunity of releasing some of those parts of the business and not having to try and figure out the website yourself and figure out the accounting system yourself and make it perfect, and then figure out the administration to make it perfect, and then before you know it, you're never going to get out there to actually go and sell your product or service or idea. So try and create teams around you of people that can help you with the workload to get the product done as best as possible. Okay. And the other one that a lot of people have, that I think maybe comes from education system, and I definitely had this problem, is I was taught to be a critical thinker in university because I studied law. I was taught to always kind of look at the downside of everything. The only problem with that is it's that you're really basing yourself on being realistic. Okay. Now, I'm sitting in a room, and I'm sure some of you are already, and my favorite analogy of this, I heard it in one of the Will Smith interviews, is that if we are all sitting in a room and we're turning things on like the light, who out of the audience can tell me exactly, and this is the right word, is exactly how electricity, you flick a switch and then the light bulb comes on? Do you actually know how that works? It's not actually realistic if you think about it. The first time someone invented the light bulb, it doesn't make any realistic sense. But we are all very grateful that these people had an optimism, they had an attitude to say, well, you know what? If it's going to be, it's up to me. I'm going to make this thing work. I believe it's going to work in the marketplace. And they just kept testing that light bulb. And for some of you know the story, Edison took 10,000 times of testing that light bulb before it actually worked. But what most people don't know is Edison didn't do it by himself 10,000 times. He had a team of other people testing that light bulb, but quantitatively together, it was 10,000 attempts. So, just always dig below the surface and find out about when people tell you, well, listen, you need to be realistic about your goals, or you need to be this and that. I think there's merit for it, but I find that the most successful people who are very effective just get on with the business, and they don't spend a lot of time thinking what they're doing is not going to work. So just always check yourself with that. Okay. So here are the 5 traits now that I believe actually will help you. And some of you will find these quite disappointing because I've done a lot of research on this. And I'm really telling you, a lot of the things that make people actually effective are not the things you think. Okay, so number one, as you probably got the clue from what doesn't work, is a lot of very effective people just tend to be very optimistic / idealistic about things. Meaning, if they go out there and launch their product, if they go out there and execute a decision, if they go out there and say, okay, my business needs to turn over, let's just say an extra $1,000 a month. Yeah, they're gonna act accordingly to that. They'll act like it's already happened. And the reason why that's important is we all know, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this, you're gonna come across some hurdles and challenges, right? Now imagine if you're already pessimistic. Chances are you're not gonna look for an optimistic solution around that. Okay, so you need to try and always have an idealistic approach to some of your businesses or some of the activities that you have. And it's always, in my opinion, so much better to aim for the moon and hit a light bulb on the street, okay, and the light lamps in the street, than it is to aim for the ground and hit it. Don't you think? So the second thing is honesty. And I've talked to some of you about this one-on-one. Honesty, in my opinion, is not about being kind of disrespectful to other people and trying to be honest to hurt their feelings, and that becomes your intention, like I talked about. Honesty for me is about saying and doing what is right, not what is popular. So, for example, one of the biggest things where most people never produce in life, in my reality, is that they spend time doing unimportant tasks. They spend time people pleasing rather than honoring themselves. So if you get a situation where you're in a business and you're saying to yourself, you've committed to the business, you're going to take on the necessary risks, chances are you're already living in the 20% of people that have to have a lifestyle that is completely different to most other people. That's just the reality. Chances are you're not going to have Saturday and Sunday off because you're running a business. You may have a Monday and Tuesday off, for example. Chances are you're not necessarily going to have a regular income coming in. But the reality is you're also not going to have a regular income when you're making $1 million a month. You understand? There's always a payoff for all of these things. But the most important thing is to be honest with yourself and say, okay, if I'm really going to do this, I have to honor myself and I have to honor my time. So if there's sometimes you don't want to spend time in the wrong places and you can feel energetically that it's probably going to serve someone else but not yourself, you have to be honest and do the right thing and honor yourself and do your business. And also honor that other person and tell them the truth is you just don't have that as a priority to do, not because you're too busy or whatever most people say these days. And that's a very, very important attribute that I find a lot of successful people have, particularly in the business world, is they really honor their time, they honor their energy, and they honor the direction of their goals. And they know if they have to get from A to B in X amount of time, chances are they'll do that first, and then everything else has to fit into that plan. But once it's achieved, guess what? They're probably the most relaxed people you meet, and they have way more time and way more resources to help you anyway. So that's just something you need to take away and think about. Then the third thing that I find, and it's kind of very close to being honest also, is they have a sense of confidence. Now, I really don't think confidence is like some people show where they're like, yeah, look at me, I'm bigger than you, better than you, or I think I'm right and you're wrong. It's not about that. And I find even in my case, a lot of people misunderstand my approach. What confidence means is that you just have this courageous certainty that, backed by optimism and honesty, obviously, that you really know what you're going to do is the right thing for the market. What you know deep down inside is you're creating a business, you're creating a project, and that project is going to make a difference in this world. Now, the minute you know that, you have to understand that you're going to be hitting some resistance in the world, and it's going to be hard because other people will or may not share your vision. And for that reason, you're going to probably have to fail forwards. Meaning you're going to have to be courageous. You pick yourself up, you say, I can do this, and then you fail. People say, well, you said you could do this last month, you didn't, you lied, whatever they're going to say. But you just hold yourself together, commit to the goal, which is the fourth one anyway, and then just have this courageousness of being confident that what you're doing is the right thing and it's going to work out. I find 9 out of 10 times the people that tend to get there eventually in life may not get there the quickest, but they always get there because they just never let up. And this is driving us into, point 4, which is they're just committed to the goal. They're not committed to feeling good all the time about it. They're not committed to having it as an easy path. They're just committed to the goal. And I really invite you guys to really think back about yourself and check yourself on these 4 points and ask yourself, are you leaning more into thinking you need to be very, very skilled in a particular area and you think that's what's going to get you to your goal? Or are you also now trying to expand your mind? And I'd really like you to start thinking about things like, how optimistic are you on a day-to-day basis about the opportunity that you're in? How optimistic are you that things are going to work out when they're not? And then when you're also looking at your finances, for example, and you just say you're not making enough money to start, how honest are you about trying to keep your operational costs low? How honest are you about living a very simple life so that you're not overextended? And you can use some of those resources to get coaching, or you can use those resources where it's needed. Okay, that's going to get you through the storm, so to say. And how honest are you about being courageous about failing forwards and knowing that you're going to fail, but chances are you're going to keep your head up and you're going to keep going as if you're not going to fail. And then the last one, like I said, is just never giving up. I find a lot of people are very, very motivated, to do the activities that are needed in a business when everything is going well. But the minute they have a bad month, I find they neglect the basic things that they knew they had to do because their morale is not there or they don't see it working. You need to really be very clear and commit to these sort of basic things, because what your business needs from you is consistency. That's the most important attribute I find with the most effective people, is they're just very consistent. Maybe not 100% of the time, but at least 8 out of 10 times of the year, they are going to get up, they're going to be enthusiastic, they're going to be honest, they're going to be confident about their delivery, and they're committed to excellence for their customers. So really check yourself on that. But let me give you what the 5th one is, and I put it in a separate note because I wanted to make a point. Is that the 5th and most important thing for effective CEOs or entrepreneurs is I find that these guys, generally are very, 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 I don't know if I said that enough, but they're very, very selective with their support systems. Now, I might challenge a few of you guys on this, but this is what I mean by selective support systems. Selective support systems are not people like your partners, for example. Partners are very, very good because let's just say you come home, you've had a very bad day, your customer has just, pardon my French, shat on you, really giving you a tough time. And you go home. I believe what's beautiful about a partner is a partner can go, what happened? How's your day? Oh, I'm really sorry. And they kind of go into this sympathetic approach because, they don't want you to be hurt and they don't want you to feel too badly. So say, take your shoes off, relax, let me give you a massage or whatever it is. I know that is a very, very beautiful support system. Okay. So if I get myself in trouble, just know that's the difference. But what I mean by effective support system is that someone else outside that bubble of sympathy that is actually very clear and knows what your goals are and knows what you need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to keep you accountable. That is a completely different effective support system. And sometimes some of you have got coaching from me or you're consulting with me, you find there's some months, and I'm sure you guys can post so everybody else can see, where I give you guys a little bit of tough love. And the only reason for that is that I have to, if you like, give you the edge that you need to perform. Now, this photo, some of you may not know who that is. This is actually Usain Bolt training with his coach. Okay. Now, Usain Bolt's the fastest man in the world, still holds numerous gold medals. Now, this guy is already top of his game. He's probably one of the most, and I'm using him for this point, he's probably one of the most peak performance, and you need peak performance in your business. Yeah. Now, he trains harder than most people, I think. But the most important thing is you can see this really short, fat black guy at the back. That could be me anyway. But he's not necessarily as fast as Usain Bolt. But what he's doing is he's looking for those slight edges. He's an effective support system because he's telling Usain Bolt, you didn't run as fast as you could have, or you didn't run and beat your time from last year. You're really slacking off. And you guys, I'm sure, can agree that sometimes some of us need to hear that because we're not actually performing at our best. Now, if you compare that to what a spouse or a friend can do sometimes, is sometimes they get you into a sympathetic environment and they make you feel bad about it. Make you feel good about the problem that you had. And maybe you may not have some of the right what's the word I'm looking for? They might not breed the right actions for you to get out of that slump or that disappointment that you had. Because some of the things they should be saying are things like, hey, listen, what actually happened in that situation? Did you make enough of the necessary calls to the ideal clients, for example? You guys know I talk about this. Last year or last month, we made X amount of sales, and these were the 10 things you did that got you those sales. How many of those things did you do this month? Oh, I only did half of those. Well, great. Can you see why we're failing then? Does that make sense? It's a very, very different way of supporting someone. Now, I'm not saying that you should try and make your spouse an effective support system this way, because sometimes you do need that when you've really had a tough day. And I know I'm one of those guys who prefer to get, kicked by my coach and come home and get sympathy. So you just really need to choose that wisely. But the most important thing I think as well is they're not sympathetic. And I just said that earlier. Because if you think about it, sometimes what you really need is an accountability partner who's going to keep you honest and also make you push you beyond your own limits where you would have probably naturally backed off. So the question you have to ask yourself there is, do you have someone like that in your life that is an effective support system? And if you don't, I strongly recommend you get one. So here are a couple of questions you just need to ask yourself. Number one, if we were to take a case study and I went around asking other people about your general attitude. Let's just say I went to ask your best friend or your family or your friends, and I said to them, okay, if 10 out of 10 is you're like super optimist, yeah, you're really positive about life, you really give things a go, and then 0 is like you're always negative, always complaining, always saying things don't work, what score would they give me? I just want you to write that down and really reflect really honestly about it for yourself. Would you say you're usually a 9 out of 10 if I went to ask these people that know you for a long time of the course of your life and how you approach projects, ideas, or your own dreams, so to say? Or would they give me a 2? Okay, so just really be honest with yourself and give yourself a mark on that. The next one is, how do you respond to failure? And this is one of the biggest challenges I find with a lot of people, including myself, is that, the level of the most successful people have a very high correlation to getting over failure really quickly. I did not say they don't have failure. So how consistent are you with your daily activities of your project? So meaning, like I said with Usain Bolt, he has to go and train, run, eat well, and do ABCD for the next 4 years before the next Olympics. Chances are, if he stops neglecting any of those daily activities because he doesn't feel good about it, it's going to take him back in his performance. So think about yourself with your activities, the daily things that you need to do. Is it the emails? Is it making calls? Is it some of these effective things that most people you see do so well? And then ask yourself, do you think these people are always enthusiastic when they do them? And the answer I can tell you is sometimes not so much. But the reality is they still do it with the same excellence. And that's a question I have for you, is how well do you respond to failure and how consistent do you still perform your activities of your projects? Okay, now the next one, which I don't even know what I meant by that, but is like, are you really honest about your needs with other people? Okay. And how often do you communicate that? So for example, if you really need something that needs to get done, if you really have a strong goal and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of not having enough resources in your business, and you make a commitment that you're going to make 10 calls that week or make 10 clients at the end of that month. And then do you communicate that to the people around you so that they respect it, and do you honor that commitment that you made to yourself? Because the chances are at the end of that month, if you have not got the result that you promised, you're the only one you can blame. And that's sometimes a little bit tough to hear, and sometimes very, very hard to hear. And this is why I also have coaches that tell me this sometimes from month to month. But the most important thing is effective people, just don't let up about their honesty, because they don't want any excuses at the end of their goal. They want to get the result, okay? Next one is, do you have a mentor and accountability partner that keeps you on track? And this is really, really important, guys. And like I said to you, it's a very, very big difference between having just a relationship partner or a friend or a parent or someone that can support you. That's their job, and I'm sure they do that really, really well. What this is that it is definitely something about having someone that can give you what we like to call in the business life tough love sometimes. It's someone that can really help you, and sometimes also be brutally honest and say, listen, you have 10 days to go and I haven't seen you do those 5 things that you said you would. Get to it. Do you have someone like that who can nurture you through that and do it in a way that's effective? Okay, because it has to be effective. So just think about those questions there. Okay, so let's move on to the second one. Now, this one is a very interesting one, and I hope it's going to challenge a few of you, but I just really want to be honest about a few things because I think these are the things that stop people being effective. Let me explain to you why money goals don't work. Okay. Now, all of us know, and we've probably all gone to school or leadership training, and we've seen, like, you need to set goals. And in fact, here's the funny part. I have also personally said to people, you need to set goals. I believe in goals. I think goals need to be there because they have one nice, beautiful word called measurable. So the question is, we all know this thing called SMART, and SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Now, I have a few problems with realistic because I think the bigger question I always ask people is if you set a goal, for example, where you want to lose 10 kilos. This is a favorite topic for most people by the beginning of New Year's after Christmas and eating too much turkey or whatever, yeah? So you set a goal that I want to lose 10 kilos. So what you do is you make it specific. It's 10 kilos. Now measurable, you say, okay, I want to lose 10 kilos in 5 months. So you divide 10 by 5, you get 2 kilos a month, okay? And then how are you going to measure it? You need a scale. So you buy yourself a scale. Is it achievable, 2 kilos a month? Yeah, I've done it before by starving myself. So this time I'm going to do exercise instead or whatever. Now, is it realistic? Here's the problem with that. If you've never, ever lost 2 kilos in your whole life, or you've never lost 10 kilos in your whole life, question I have for you guys is where is your self-esteem in that? Where is your belief system in that? And how are you confidently going to attack some of the tasks that are needed if you've never even had a reality of what it means to lose 10 kilos? And then lastly, how do you know that 2 kilos is realistic enough time frame over 2 months? Yeah? These are very, very important, challenging questions that I was challenged once upon a time because I think I was, how old was I? Probably 18, I can't remember. And I set a goal to be a millionaire at 18. Now, there is nothing wrong with that, and now there's a lot of information, case studies, as you guys probably know, millionaires that did that by the age of 18. But that is not the issue. The reality was, if I really was honest with myself, back to what I said about effective CEOs, I probably deep down inside never believed I was worth $1 million. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the skills. I didn't even have a business that I thought could get me there. And more importantly, I had never met any millionaire that I could tell who could guide me in terms of the necessary, quote unquote, realistic steps that it took to be a millionaire at 18. So guess what I did? I frustrated myself all the way through. And I felt so disappointed by the time I turned 19 because I was a whole year gone where I thought I worked my ass off and didn't achieve my goal. So who else has been there before, be it about money, be it about financial goals, be it about weight loss, be it about being more happy, whatever the goal is. So my reality with studying all these case studies and looking at people peak performance in general is that these specific measurable goals don't actually work unless you have an accountability partner who has a reality on how long it takes and also some of the potential setbacks that you're going to have. But number two, they hopefully have the honesty to come and tell you and ask you a specific question. Like, let's just say some of you come to me and say you want to make $1 million in 6 months. I always say it's possible, and I don't think anyone should ever take that away from you. But the reality is we have to match your activity and your belief system to be in accordance with what a millionaire would do on a day-to-day basis. And the fact is, if you're not performing as a millionaire or a peak performer would, you're not going to get the result. And you just have to be brutally honest about that. But there is a solution. And, Warren Buffett himself says, particularly in the money area, because you can easily measure it, you cannot control your money if you cannot control your emotions. So if you don't have a high self-esteem or confidence about money and you have all these charges and background barriers because your parents told you you're not worthy or you got dropped on your head as a baby or you've been told you're going to be broke for the rest of your life, like I've had in my life, for so many years, I had to first clean out all those emotional negativity, if you like, and then replace them with good feelings of what it took. But then I partnered up with some people that believed in me more than I did. And that's what got me to these goals. Is that making sense? So I hope you really think about that, and I hope that helps you also. So here's a couple of questions on that. Number one is, how many goals have you set that you have not achieved? So my intention for this webinar is not to throw cold water on you. It's just to get you to really be brutally honest with yourself and say, okay, I've wrote so many goals down of making this much money or having this amazing business, and none of that has worked. Okay, so what do I need to change? And this is what Einstein said. It's the same mind that has created the problems you have today cannot be the same mind to change them. So we need new information and we need new emotions. And this is the second question which most people don't teach. And this is what I'm bringing to you because I had to think about it and say, okay, what is it that can help you really achieve your goals or the things you want to do? And the truth of the matter, guys, is it's not about the goal of making $10,000 a month in your business, for example. It's not even about, having a successful business, which everybody wants on the planet, trust me. The goal is that if you want those things, you have to ask yourself a deeper question, which is, how would you feel about yourself if you were to achieve $1 million business? Would you even know the answer to what that looks like? So just to help you with that, if you're making $25,000 a month profit in your business, you are $1 million business. Most people don't even know that. So these multimillionaires you see on BRW, ABCDEFG, all they've done is created a project that generates $25 million profit, and they call themselves millionaire. You double that, you're a multimillionaire. That's the bottom line of that story. It's not that complicated. But until you actually know that game, and then you start thinking to yourself, okay, what is it going to take for me to generate $25,000 profit? Who is the person I need to become? How is that going to feel for me? What does an average day look like? Okay, that is so important. And if you can't clarify in your mind what you're going to be doing as a person that is generating that sort of lifestyle, I can probably tell you the chances of achieving it are very little. It doesn't matter what goal you set and what time frame and what strategies you get. It's just not going to, the spiritual word is resonate, but the practical word is you're not going to have enough activity or energy to get you there. Okay, so the bigger question you need to ask yourself is any goal that you've ever set with me or with anybody else or someone you've told that you want to achieve, you need to ask yourself the honest question is, what does a day in the life of someone succeeding in that area have? What do they have to do? Who are the people they influence? Are they healthy people? And if they're healthy, then you need to start being healthy now. Okay, and then once you achieve that situation, what do these guys do when they have disappointment? Do they act like me when they're disappointed? Do they quit and stay in bed, or do they get up and find another opportunity? Chances are it's the later. So you really need to be honest about that. And then the goal I have and what I encourage you guys to think about is forget the goal, throw away the goal. Okay, don't throw away the goal, but have the goal in mind. But once you have the goal in mind, create the lifestyle and the feeling and the emotion around what it means once you've achieved it. And then write down the daily things you need to do to keep that going. And once you have that, those are the things you focus on. I really hope that inspires you and makes sense. Okay, so we're just going to move on to section 3. I might need to borrow another 15 minutes to finish this because we kind of had technical challenges, so I'll continue. Third thing, and I love this man to bits because I've met him. He's an amazing man. Most people know him as a brand icon and one of the most successful entrepreneurs. Okay, now what is interesting is Branson, I think at this stage is about $3 billion worth in net worth. And just so you guys understand, there are some richer people out there in the world. But for whatever reason, he's the guy that looked into entrepreneurship. But this is the challenge. Most people then start building their business to emulate someone like him. Okay, but I just have a very interesting question for you. What if I were to challenge you and say, maybe you don't need to be like Richard Branson for you to have even the same money or more money than him? What if your personality, I'm talking about now who you are as an effective person, what if you don't work like Richard Branson? Richard Branson sleeps, I think, on 4 hours a day. You know, he sleeps 8 times through the day and he runs global businesses. He's always trying new things. And he has 250 brands under his company, plus. But then there's people like Warren Buffett on the bottom left-hand side corner. Now, if you guys know anything about Warren Buffett, I've never met him personally, but I've read a lot about his biographies and things like that. He's a very almost focused on individual that really crunches numbers. He's very analytical. He does a lot of research. I don't think Branson does a little bit of, he's very intuitive about how he operates. But the question I have for all of you logged in today, and those of you that are going to listen to this recording, is my big challenge to you is, what is your success profile? Just write that down. What is my success profile? And I feel that until you answer that question, you probably fall into an innovative person, you fall into a sensory person, you fall into an introverted type person, or you fall into an extroverted type person. And you know, the deal maker man, Mr. Donald Trump, and where he's at politically, but he's a very outspoken, extroverted type personality. But believe it or not, I've met Richard Branson. He's not anything like that. He's a very quiet person, and I was so shocked when I met him. But the reality is, I find these two people, and you probably know this anyway, they are so different, and yet they're all billionaires. Don't you find that interesting? So the question I have for you today is, before we get into all these strategies and things that you think are going to make you successful, like being perfect or being like Richard Branson, ask yourself, what about these other successful entrepreneurs that I've showcased here on this profile? And more importantly, what sort of energy do you project out there? Are you more of a cold person, a cold like a negative sense, but you're just very careful about how you do things? You're very strategic and you want things perfect. That's okay, celebrate that. Or are you one of these very overzealous, extroverted type people? And that's okay. But if you want to be that person, and I also challenge you that if you meet someone else who's very different to you, take that into consideration and don't judge them just because they don't like you. Because this is where a lot of people also waste energy trying to become like somebody else. You don't have to. You can stay uniquely yourself. But there are some success principles you have to follow. And one of them is be honest with yourself. So I really hope you take this away, because this is very, very important as you build your business, is what type of personality are you and what sort of strength. And what I would like to share with you here is that there is an amazing simple book. I'm into very simple books at work. I read this probably, I'm not sure, 16 years ago now. It's called Personality Plus. I really recommend you read it. Now, the person that wrote it is a little bit, religious. That's okay. They put a few religious quotes all over the place. But the context of the book basically summarizes that there are basically 4 strong personality types. Okay, now you've probably heard of disc profiling, psychometric testing. I've done all those, I've studied those, and yes, they're all very good and they work, but sometimes they're too complicated. What I'm just trying to do is bring it back to basics for you guys so you can make it become more effective. And just understand, within 5 or 10 minutes of me meeting someone, be it a prospect, a client, someone I like to talk to further, it doesn't matter. I always go through this dialogue in my mind of finding out, are they an amiable person? Are they an extroverted person? And the minute I know they're extroverted, I'll probably increase my energy to match them and become a little bit more vocal with that person. Not because I'm trying to pretend, it's just because I know they're more likely to connect with me so we can get down to business. Does that make sense? And then there's other people who are very quiet. They're very, very, very thoughtful. They really want to process things because they want to be sure about what they say. They want to make sure we've done enough research. They want to make sure that everything we say is factual. And they want to know the data behind it. They want a graph, they want a picture, they want facts. Okay, so you can imagine those people we call melancholy on the bottom right. So let's just imagine you're a sanguine, you're extroverted, you're high energy, you're out there. And then you meet a melancholy person who's a decision maker for a key partnership you're looking to do. And you go and babble and talk right over them and never really listen to what they're saying or give them an opportunity to speak. Chances are you won't win that business. Does that make sense? So notice I lowered my tone only because I know there's a very different approach to that. Now that all takes time, guys. But the reality is I recommend it. You read the book, there's a test to do in there. Find out who you are. Capitalize on your strength and then discover all these other variations of personalities of people you're going to meet out there in the marketplace. That is what's going to make you effective, not a business plan. Okay, so really spend the time if you can, do the test, study about that profile, and then find out how other people respond to you. And I think the goal really in life, if I will be completely honest with you so far in my journey 16 years later, is for me to be at the 0 point. That's at the intersection between all the personalities. And just stay there and wait for someone to show themselves and then expand myself into all these capacities. Because the reality is we all have all these personalities in us. But the question is, which one do you let out first based on who you're talking to? So really think about that. So here are a couple of questions on that. Is who do you identify your personality to be like the most? If you're a Richard Branson type of person, great. Check out his profile. Check out your see if you match. Okay. And how effective are you in the business when it comes to your core activities? And you know, I'm very big on this, guys. Are you passionate about it? Because chances are, if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to produce excellence in that area or try and improve it. And I find the most challenging thing I have in my consulting is someone wants to make $1 million or make money or create a lifestyle through a business, and then they go pick something that is the safest option, for example, and think that it's going to be easy, when the reality is they still have to experience the same challenges to grow it. And then what that person does is they stop innovating, or they're choosing something that is showcasing their weaknesses more than their strengths. And so they don't actually build a very powerful business that's compelling in the marketplace. That's a very slippery slope, and it's probably 10, 20, 30 times harder to build. So I always try and bring people back to the passion and bring people back to their core strengths and bring people to align themselves with the personality that they genuinely or uniquely have, and then grow from there. So this is a question I ask is, do you play harder to your core strengths? I find in my case, guys, I love to research business. I love to succeed in projects that can be sustainable financially, economically, socially, all these aspects of life. So I'm very passionate about that, but I'm also passionate about helping others in those areas. And most importantly, I love speaking and I love coaching. Now, I didn't call them those words when I started off, but if you can already see, my personality has a lot of details and strong analytical strengths, if you like, and you probably experience this when we're coaching, and I can come up with some good strategic ideas for people. But at the same time, I like to communicate those into words, PowerPoints, presentations. I like to teach. So for me, those are my strengths, you know. And so now I spend more time making those strengths, let's just say they're about a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. I spend time trying to make them a 20 out of 10. And I'm more likely to get there quicker than I am looking at some other skill I don't have, and I'm a 0 out of 10 to try and make it a 5 just because someone thinks that's the business I should be in. So really, really check yourself on that, because it's a very dangerous slope. So the last question on that one also is, and I love this one, it's like, you know, people compare themselves to Richard Branson now. He's 60 plus years old, guys. He's been in business for over 40 years. The Richard Branson you see on the interviews with all these slick answers, cool books, planes flying all over the place, is not the same Branson that started with a student newspaper 40 years ago. So I really, really, really challenge you guys to be very careful when you start comparing yourself to currently successful entrepreneurs. What you should be asking more, the question is, do I fit the personality like this person is? Do I like the businesses that they have? And am I expected to be as confident, as skilled, as famous as that person? Or did they have a journey of 40 years to get there? It's a very, very important question, because what I find sometimes that will stop you in business being effective is you're spending more time trying to be someone else, and you don't grow into being the most successful you. So really take that home, because trust me, that's one of the biggest nuggets I can give you for this webinar today, is you don't have to be like Richard Branson to have the same success. And even Richard Branson wasn't Richard Branson you know today. He was a very different entrepreneur at the time he started his journey, and he has grown to earn that. So why not you? Okay, so last segment, which is very basic, is now I just want to leave you guys with some guidelines. And some of you have seen this, but I live and breathe these concepts, because I think business world out there, guys, with the amount of information we have, is so complicated. There's so many things out there you can do, 10,000 strategies. And I always ask the question in webinars, it's like, you know, how many of you have read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Most people put their hands up. You guys can post here if you want about it. I'm sure some of you have come across that book. It's an amazing book. Then I asked the question, okay, so what are the 7 habits then? And guess what most people say? They can't remember. So why would I then also come and overcomplicate it and give you some more difficult guidelines? So I'm just going to give you the ones that have worked for me. But what I love about these, and I'm big on principles, is I've applied these also in my life, and they seem to work. I've applied them in my health, and they seem to work. So they're just very beautiful universal principles that are very simple. So let's get started. If you don't believe me, believe the experts. These guys, Carnegie Institute, you might have heard of them. They've been around for a long, long time. They've done extensive research on individual peak performances, business knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what they found out. It's astonishing. They said 85% of your financial success is due to, number one, your personality and the ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. Only 15% is due to technical knowledge. So when I read things like this, I go do my own case studies on the successful people I aspire to become. And then I start asking myself, what sort of personality do they have? How do they communicate? How do they negotiate? How do they lead? And I found in 100% of the cases, guys, that's the stuff that got them there. It's not the fact that they came up with a fancy website. It's not the fact that they have MBAs and bachelor degrees and et cetera, et cetera. It's all to do with the emotional perspective, which is why I put those 5 things, which is a surprise to most people, as to what makes you as an effective leader. It is not the things you think, it's the soft skills. So I really want you guys to take that home and really ask yourself, are you working on your personality 85% of the time? Are you working on how you communicate to people 80% of the time? Are you sensitive to things like culture? Are you sensitive to things like talking to men or women in different locations? If you're doing business deals, are you watching the marketplace and how people do business? Are you arrogant, or are you someone people want to hang out with? Do you negotiate things well? You know, do you ask people for their point of views and listen intently? And when it comes to leadership, are you telling people what to do, or are you doing it first? I think those are the really, really fundamental things that are going to get you there, guys. I really believe that. So think about that for yourself. Okay, so here are basically the 10 rules. Now, these are awesome, in my opinion. Why? Because I have a simple brain, and these are simple rules. And I don't have the time, because it's already getting past the time for me to go. But I don't have the time to go into each and every rule. I can spend, and I probably will if you guys are open to this, I can do 1-hour segments on each of these 10 rules as they apply in my personal life and my business. And I can probably put a dollar figure on how much it translates. It's just amazing how close they are. But for the sake of today, I just wanted to expand on one just to show you how deep you can go with some of these. And the main one there for me that I think is very important for you if you're a startup or you're struggling in business, coming out of a slump, those sort of things, is look at number one. Number one, it's not I, it actually stands for one. It's one CEO. And I started this on the title, and I'll just elaborate on what that means. One CEO for me, guys, and you've probably seen this on my business cards, you've seen this on my email campaigns. I introduce myself as a CEO, and sometimes people think that's very arrogant. But what they don't know is CEO stands for Chief Energy Officer. One of the most consistent things I've found with the most effective people is they have tons of energy. Tons of it. I'm not talking bashful shouting and screaming on the top of the voices. It's just they have so much passion for what they're doing. And it generates a lot of energy. And I hope you guys can even hear it in my voice. Every time I see this rule, I look at it and I benchmark myself and say, can I give myself an extra 10% in energy to deliver an idea to you guys? Can I give myself 10% energy in the day to be present in the day and really find the research or what can help you guys get the slight edge so you can perform better in your businesses? That's my mission in life. But I find if I'm talking to you like this and I change my tone to a bit more monotone and I start saying things like, hey, you know, the most important thing is to be a CEO, you're going to fall asleep. Yeah? And this is what is one of the biggest challenges is you find if you're not going to be effective in the business world if you don't have energy. And that also comes really well connected with how much health you have, guys. Are you looking after yourself? Are you eating well? You find a lot of successful people tend to have a lot of energy because they look after themselves. And are they passionate about their ideas? Do you feel it when they're talking about it, regardless of what it is? I really invite you to think about that for yourself. So don't think that CEO is about a title for me or for most people in life. It just means they want to be leaders in the energy space. They want to command a room when they get into it and really attract people to compel them with their ideas. But that's not necessarily about what you're saying. It's about how you're saying it and how much state you have in energy. So really check yourself. So, and here's another thing about CEOs. These guys know how to make decisions. And most people don't even know what that means. So by definition, this is Latin. Decision derives from incision. It means to cut off from. So if you say to me, Aaron, I'm going to go and build a business and I'm going to do whatever it takes to do this business. And then you decide that today, but tomorrow you spend your whole day watching TV, chatting with your friends, hanging out with your family, doing or going back to your day job and not doing any part of that day related to what's going to produce results for you, chances are you haven't made the decisions. Just that simple. So what I always check myself on and what my coaches check me on is these two things. They're looking for these ingredients when I start talking about these things. They say, okay, Aaron, you've made a decision. Great. What I need to see from you is two things. Number one, it needs to be immediate. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, not I'll do that next year. You need to start acting different immediately. And then that tells me you've made a decision. But number two is you take massive action. This is one of the biggest falling blocks for most people. They might sign for a program with me or with anybody actually. They pay the money and they think that's a decision. No, it has to be backed up with activity, a lot of activity, so much activity that the people in your normal life look at you and go, oh my goodness, man, shit, something's changed. When you start hearing that, you know you made a decision. It's really that simple. And if you're really after trying to get great results in a short time frame, it has to be massive, guys. Massive. Massive to a point where some people call you crazy. And that's really what it takes. And that takes a lot of energy, like I said before. So I want you to think about this, is just go back and think to myself, all the things I've said I've made decisions on, am I basing it on doing something immediately? And number two, am I following through with a lot of action? So here's the last thing on that, is CEOs define decisions differently to most people. Entrepreneurs define effectiveness different to most people. Effectiveness is not saying I put in 15 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours, and therefore I feel successful. It's about results. But this is also something that I had to change over the course of my career, is I used to think when I make a decision, it means I have to do it perfect. That's not what decision means. A decision is a 4-step process, and I hope you can write this down. Number one, you make a decision, you say something. No problem. Everybody hears you. Clap, clap, clap on the shoulder. Secondly, is it has to be backed up by action. If you haven't backed it up by action, it's not a decision. But once you back it up by action, you have to evaluate the results. And this, to me, guys, was a breath of fresh air. And for some of you who will get this, this will transform your life completely. Decision doesn't mean that you have to get the result immediately and that becomes the end outcome and you quit. A decision just means it will lead you to a result. And if the result is bad, let's just say you said you're going to launch a business on the 15th and complications happen, your computer dies, you don't launch on the 15th. You evaluate that situation and then you do the next step. And the next step is you accept responsibility. You don't go blaming your mother, father, technical issues. You just get on with it and you relaunch that product, like I said. And then you fix the things that didn't work, and then you make a new decision, take more action, and on it goes. And then you spiral your way to the top. Now, the first time I heard this, I don't know, it must have been 3 years ago, guys. And I looked back at all the businesses I built, and I said to myself, oh my goodness, if only I detached myself from trying to make things perfect and I attached myself to the process of what a true decision is. And one thing that my coach said once to me, which is really, really amazing, he says, you know, Aaron, building a business or having goals is like you trying to get from, say, Bali to Sydney. Did you know the plane is off? Listen, guys, it is off track 80 to 90% of the time. But we always tend to land in Sydney Airport. Why? Because all the way along the journey, it is just making adjustments as it goes, because it never loses sight of the goal, but it never flies in a straight line. Did you know that? I found that so amazing, and simple things amaze me. But the fact is, that's the same with your business. That is the same with being an effective person. Effective people make more mistakes than most people because all they do is just keep adjusting themselves, but they never lose sight of the decision. So I really hope that helps you. So here's the last couple of questions for you. How quickly do you make decisions and how quickly do you back it up by action? That is the most important tell of whether you meant what you said or you didn't. And only you will have to live with that, guys. Number two is how often do you procrastinate about your activities that need to get done? And I find this happens for people after they probably launched their business and the enthusiasm is gone. And then they're like, okay, you needed to have sent 10 emails, done this. But because nothing's really happening, they don't do the basics. Or they put it off for tomorrow. You know that word, yeah. Tomorrow never comes, guys. So How can you stay enthusiastic and consistent about your core activities? It's very important. Then number 3, when was the last time you tried to learn a new skill? Just because your business worked really well last year, some of you are finding new year, new generation, you need different things. Try and learn new skills, do research around your industry, what's cutting edge, what's coming out, how can you better solve your clients' problems? Can you solve them in a quicker way, qualitative way, whatever it is? Are you offering new things that can help your businesses and your clients? That is a very, very important thing. And then just become like an eternal student. That's very, very important. If you do not, you become Nokia. And you know what happened with Nokia before the iPhone, okay? So the last one there is, where do you put the blame when things don't go right? Do you always quickly say, well, it's not my fault, this didn't work out because of the economy? Now, for some of you spiritual people, I hear this a lot, oh, it's not my fault, it's retrograde, the universe is not aligned or something like that. Now, none of those is actually wrong. It's just the problem with any of those reasons is it takes you away from owning the responsibility of the problem. Therefore, you can't own the power of the solution. So you find most successful people tend to take full responsibility because they want to own the power so they can make a decision to change it. It's just that simple. So let's just recap, guys. Number 1 is CEOs, like I said, or entrepreneurs or business owners. It's not about the title. It's about having an energetic state to focus on results. So it's not just about working hard and putting in the hours, guys. You can put in a lot of hours and not make a lot of money in business. You have to find the things that work well. So my general theory is find the 20% of activities you have in your business that produce 80% of the results. And those are the things you do and you work so hard. You've never worked harder in your life on those 20%. And that still gives you a lot of time off. Yeah. Number 2. Are you using your sensory aspects to achieve your desires, not goals? So are you stopping setting $1 million goals and really focusing on, servicing your clients, but then your clients will pay you anyway to get that $1 million? Are you looking at the lifestyle you want to have and then looking at what do you need to do day to day in those areas so that you can actually start growing into becoming that entrepreneur that can attract those things? Number 3, please, please, please find out what your unique talents are and lean on your strengths. Weaknesses are always going to be there. There are things I do in my business. Some of you will be amazed. I cannot even operate some of these computers half the time, but I don't let that bog me down. I do my best in those areas, but 90% of the time, guys, I'm focusing on the things I'm naturally good at that make me an expert in the industry. Number 4, keep things simple. Just keep things simple. My reality is, guys, if you can't explain your business to a person walking down the street, a 5-year-old and a parent, as to what problems you solve in your business, you're not in business and nobody's going to buy your product. It's too complicated. It needs to be simple and needs to solve problems. And then lastly, just take action, 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 adjust, action, action, action. Because the most important thing I know for a fact is the only time you are ever worrying in your business is usually when you're not working in your business. So I hope these things really, really help you guys. And just for the next session, in case you want to know, is we're going to talk about the 7 fears, because I'm finding this is coming up for a lot of entrepreneurs, is what they know. I fear this is not going to happen. I fear this, I fear this, I fear this. So they don't actually get out there and do the things that need to happen. So I'm going to address some of those 7 fears that come up a lot in people as to why they don't succeed. And then we're going to look at some remedies for that in the next month session. But that'll be on the 4th of July. So I hope you can tune in, same time, same place. And I really, really appreciate your patience on this. So what I would like to do now is for those people that are new to the program or come to the webinar and learned for the first time to be here, I'd really like to invite you guys to join our program. We have a 12-month subscription program. And basically what we do is we have these hot topics coming in every month. We record them. You get invitation also for sometimes opportunities to get one-on-one sessions with me, because I understand some of you have specific problems that you want to overcome, and it's not exactly in a general context. So I only tend to cherry pick those people from doing that. And the next thing is that, like I said, it's a $49 subscription per month, but I'm also not here to chase people for payments. That's not my goal. My goal is to deliver value. So if any of this resonates, please send an email to operations@lockprofit.com. And someone will send you a process or steps of how you can get yourself set up. So thank you very much for joining us, and I really look forward to seeing you on the next session next month.